Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am very much honored to be speaking at the Teenagers Outreach Ministries. I sincerely apologize for not sharing this live. This is because I already approved um, an appointment about 4 weeks prior to this one. Um, but the Smile Outreach team will be attending this to answer any questions that might arise after the session. Um, Just very quickly checking that all things are set at my end before we begin. Okay, we're good. So I will talk about the Smile Outreach a bit, introduce myself, and then we go into the topic for today. The Smile Outreach is a non-profit organization with a mission to empower and uplift communities across Africa, focusing on adolescent health, women's empowerment, and youth agency for social change. My name is Bijemi, and I happen to be the founder of the Smile Outreach. I founded this around the time I carried out a community development service during my NYC in 2018. And ever since, it has been quite the journey. Our work is driven by a commitment to tackle issues around sexual grooming, which is the topic of today, cross generational sexual relationship, menstrual equity, child marriage, and harmful traditional practices. And we do all of these things through education, through support, and advocacy. We operate on several fronts, as you can see on your screen right here. You can see our pillars. To achieve our mission, we focus on adolescent health and education. By this, what we mean is we provide comprehensive advocacy and educational programs that focus on the topics that we cover: sexual grooming, menstrual equity, sexual and reproductive health rights. We educate adolescents about these issues. We empower them to make informed decisions about their health and their well-being. Our second pillar is youth agency and leadership. And we do this through the Outreach Youth Lab, where we train and support emerging youth leaders. We equip them with the skills and the resources that they need to drive social change within their communities. This particular program is a 6-month intensive training that covers advocacy strategies, it covers media campaigns, it covers community development. The third pillar right here on my screen is women's empowerment. For these, we actually are committed to promoting gender balance. That's the word I would say, and ensuring that women have equal rights and opportunities. Our programs address gender-based violence. We provide support for menstrual health. We combat harmful traditional practices like female genital mutilation. And then, last but not least, on the pillar, our pillars are community engagement and advocacy. Now, we work very closely with local communities to create supportive environments for open discussions and education on sensitive topics. And we do this by engaging our network of volunteers, our network of advocates, even our Youth Lab fellows, our soon to be alumni, parents, educators, community leaders like you, um, watching this session to ensure the sustainability of our effort. Our primary initiatives are aligned with Sustainable Development Goals 2, 3, 4, 5, and 17. As you can see on the screen, these are our priorities. We're promoting gender balance, we're preventing sexual grooming, we're combating cross-generational sexual relationships. I don't have to talk, these are a given, so I would not take too much of your time to sort of go in detail about what each of these mean. It's right here on the screen. Um, One thing I want to point out is the fact that we offer effective training for advocacy, which is why we're having this session today. And again, I want to use this opportunity to thank the Teenagers Outreach Ministries team for this opportunity. Our core values: empowerment, because we believe in empowering. Compassion, what we do is rooted in compassion. Inclusivity, we strive for inclusivity, we strive to break down societal stigmas. Integrity, collaboration, we cannot achieve the things that we do without collaborating. Innovation, which is something we are committed to doing at all times. So there are 6 core values here. These are not all encompassing. I believe we could add a few more in the years to come. Now, on to the topic for today. It's a difficult topic, but it's absolutely essential for us as a church, for us as a family, for us as a society to talk about. It's a topic that sits at the heart of our calling at Smile Outreach. It should sit at the heart of our calling as parents, as teachers, as youth workers, and as followers of Christ. We want to talk about sexual grooming and how we can protect the children God has entrusted to our care. And I want to start by grounding us in the words of Jesus himself in Matthew 18. Jesus gives one of his most severe warnings where he doesn't mince words. The gravity of this verse tells us protecting children isn't a good idea or a modern safety concern. It's a sacred non-negotiable command from our Lord. It frames our conversation today not in fear, but as faithful, fierce, in love. Our goal is to be aware, not to be suspicious, but to be wise stewards of the precious lives in our midst. I encourage you all to work with me as we talk about this topic. So, why is this topic important? Because scripture is crystal clear about the value of children and our responsibility towards them. Psalms 127 tells us that children are a heritage, a reward, a gift entrusted to us by God Himself. They are not our possessions, they are His, and we are stewards. Our role as parents and handlers of teens is one of sacred trust. Proverbs commands us to be their voice, to be their advocates, to be their protectors. And this is a world where children sometimes can be voiceless. We are called to speak on our behalf. As well. So as we move forward, let's hold this in perspective. This is not us just checking a box on a safety policy. This is us trying to steward God's gift that He has given our community, which personally I think is an act of worship. So when we say sexual grooming, what does it mean? It is a term that we hear now often, but it's a definition that needs specificity. It's something that I have been passionate about for the past 7 years. In simple terms, grooming is a deceptive process. It's when a predator methodically builds a relationship with a child, and very often with the child's entire family to gain their trust. The goal is always abuse. The goal is abuse, it's rape. The goal is violence, but everything starts from grooming. At least that's what I think. And the path there is paved with manipulation. There are three themes I need us to understand about this definition. First, grooming is a process. It's not an event. It does not just happen. It's not when a stranger comes out of the bushes. That's not the scenario that we're talking about here. This is a slow, deliberate strategy that unfolds over time. And sometimes it unfolds over weeks, years even. Second, because grooming is a process, because it is planned, the groomer's actions are intentional, right? It's a planned thing. They are testing boundaries, they're building trust, they're moving forward with their goal in a calculated manner. And number three, this is the most critical point for us to grasp about grooming, is that it hides in plain sight. The predator will always appear charming. The predator will always appear helpful and kind at first. So, disclaimer, a groomer can be the most dedicated volunteer sometimes. Sometimes they are the most helpful neighbor, the cool uncle. Their manipulative behaviors are disguised as normal, caring actions, which also makes it very difficult for us to detect. And sadly so. So it's dangerous and it's difficult to spot if we don't know what we're looking for. Strategic. They often look for children they perceive as easier targets. They might target a child who seems lonely or who is struggling to make friends because that child will be more receptive, to their special attention. So we already know that attention is a tactic. They might look for a child with low self esteem because the child will be hungry for praise and affirmation and validation. Now, children who lack consistent and constant supervision, who are going through turmoil at home, or who have some unmet emotional needs, can also be at a higher risk. Now, the predator sees a need. That's all I want to point out here, and positions themselves as the one to fill that need in the child's life. Now, I need to be incredibly clear on my next point because I want you all to remember this section from this particular webinar. These factors increase the risk, they are not the prerequisite. The research is empathetic. Any child can be a target. A happy child can still be targeted. A confident child can still be targeted. A well-adjusted child even can still be targeted, right? So thinking that your child is not vulnerable or that this will not happen in my family, is a dangerous blind spot. Let's just be on the lookout, be on the watch, so that we don't create a false sense of security that a predator can and will exploit when they see that. So our vigilance has to be universal for every single child in our care. Onto the next slide. So, how does this process work? Researchers have identified a clear, predictable pattern with distinct stages. And this is incredibly helpful because it gives us a roadmap. It shows us that there are early, non-sexual stages that we can spot, and intervene before anything happens. It begins with targeting, right? The predator doesn't pick a child at random. They watch the child, they observe the child, they select the child, right? Because they need ease of access. The second one is gaining the child's trust. This is where they put on their mask. They become charming, likable. They become the person everyone in the society would probably not believe can do such an act. They walk their way into the lives of families because they want access. Now, once they have a foothold, they move to feeling a need. They find out what the child is missing. They find out if it is attention, if it is affirmation, if it is validation, if it is money, right? And it comes as gifts. They give gifts, they offer praise, they become the one person who truly understands the child. Now, this creates a powerful sense of dependency because the child begins to depend on them more than you, the guardian, or the parent. Now, the next stage is isolation. The predator begins to engineer ways to get the child alone. They begin to offer to babysit for no reason. They offer to give rights. They offer to provide one on one tutoring. Now, they may subtly drive a wedge or put a distance between the child and the parent, the child and the child's friends, so that the child feels that it is them against the world. Now, only after the child is dependent and isolated does the predator begin to introduce sexual activities. They begin to sexualize the relationship. It's slow, right? It's a desensitization process. It starts with accidental touches. It starts with tickling them that goes too far and inappropriate jokes that begin, at a point it gets serious. Now, once abuse has occurred, the moment a predator goes beyond, as you can see here, goes beyond the isolation stage and sexualization is introduced, at that stage, abuse will happen. In fact, abuse has happened. And when abuse has happened, they begin to gain control. They use a powerful cocktail of manipulation, secrets, threats against the child or their family, guilt, even blackmailing the child to keep the child silent and trap the child in a circle of abuse. Now, this is the anatomy of deception. These are the stages of grooming. This is the roadmap. Now, if you notice any of these signs that I've pointed out, It's time to watch closely. It's time to call to attention these things to someone who has the power to stop this. If probably you are teaching, you are a worker, and you don't have the right, for example, you speak to that child's parent and say, "Oh, we notice this is happening. We sense that this particular individual is gaining your child's trust or is attempting to feel a need and putting a distance between you and your child." On to the next slide. We want to talk about tactics, the tools in the groomer's toolkit. Many of these tools are twisted, they are manipulative, they are exaggerated and extreme versions of perfectly normal and kind behaviors. So that it does not look like we are trying to say that people who are simply kind are suddenly the ones you should suspect. No, it would just be a tad bit too much, right? So it's twisted. It's they are twisting normal and kind behaviors, and you just assume that they just love your child like that, or that the magnitude of their love is that high. No, one common tactic is love bombing. And this one is not even a grooming issue. It happens even to adults. The groomer overwhelms the child with so much praise and compliment. The child cannot do anything wrong. The child is made to feel like the most important and special person in the world, which can be intoxicating for a young person, especially the one who feels overlooked. Then they are often extremely generous with gifts. It's not birthday gift, it's not their birthday, it's not maybe Christmas period, it's not Easter, and they're just getting gifts. Steady gifts, money, treats. It just creates a sense of depth, right? It makes even the parents of a child begin to feel like they owe, you know, some level of loyalty to this person. The unspoken message is, I do all this for you, so you owe me. That's what those gifts mean. One day I will collect it. That's what those gifts mean. So groomers are masters of secrets. That's the third thing I wanted to point out here. They will share a secret with the child, something that is not harmful. They're just preparing the child just to make them feel that don't tell your mom, don't tell your dad, let me tell you something. They say things like that. It makes the child feel like they are suddenly adults. And every child, when we're growing up, we wanted to be adults very quickly. And we just felt we knew what we wanted. We had our lives under control, which is not true. So they try to validate those thinking and use secrets to do that. They try to create an exclusive bond and then establish a pattern of keeping the things from parents, which is crucial. So when you notice that your child is beginning to keep secret or no longer shares things like they used to, you need to watch these things. They are always offering to help. First to volunteer, I pointed this out before. Free tutoring, always ready to babysit. It looks like they are just being generous, but the underlying motive is to manufacture opportunities to be alone with the child. They will absolutely use their status, their position of trust, whether it's a respected elder, a beloved coach. It's the perfect camouflage for the things that they do. And then we are conditioned as a society to trust people in certain roles, and predators know that very well, and they will exploit that. And then finally, they may even play the victim card. What do I mean by that? They might confide in the child about their own problems and make the child feel responsible for the adult emotional well-being. They flip the power dynamic. This is actually the most manipulative form of emotional control. But the key here is that it is not a single action, it's a pattern. They usually don't focus on one thing. Everything here is manipulation. Everything on your screen right now, it's manipulation. But there are different ways and different forms, and different predators, different groomers use this to their advantage. I'm still on sexual grooming. Let's talk about online grooming. We cannot talk about sexual grooming without talking about the digital wilderness our kids are navigating every single day. The internet has supercharged the grooming process. The internet has made it faster, easier, and more anonymous for predators. Online, a predator's greatest weapon is anonymity. A 50-year-old man can create a fake profile and convincingly pose as a 14-year-old boy or girl. The fact that AI exists today and people can generate images alone makes it scary. They can use stolen photos. They don't need to do that anymore. They can generate photos, right? It allows them to bypass a child's natural defenses against talking to strange adults. Once the child feels that they are talking to their peer, they instantly just begin to open up and say things. Now, their access to our children becomes unprecedented. They are on the same social media networks, the same messaging apps, the same online video games that our kids love. They don't need to be in our community physically anymore to be in our children's life. Now, before a predator sends a message to a child, before a predator online sends a Facebook message, or I think it's TikTok now, a TikTok message to a child, they have done some extensive background work. They've gone through the child's public Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn profiles. They've learned their hobbies. They've watched all of their videos. They've seen their insecurities. They can tell who the friends are because now we can see who is following you, who you are following. Then they use that information to craft the perfect tailored approach. And the goals are always sinister. The predator will build a relationship with the child online. The goal again is to manipulate them. Sometimes it will get them to send, get children to send them naked pictures. And once they have those images, they begin to blackmail these children and demand more horrific crime. The word for this is sextortion, extortion, extorting the child to send more videos, or they release it to the public. They build enough trust sometimes to arrange a physical meeting where obviously we know what happens. Now, our vigilance is not just the people who knock on our front doors. Our vigilance have to extend to the health of our children's profiles online. Who are they talking to when they're on their own in bedrooms, on their phones? Who are they talking to? Is there timeout? Are your children still on your phone till 12 midnight? These are things we need to begin to look into. Okay, I think I've talked about everything. I just needed to check. I honestly hope that all that I've been saying, because my Wi-Fi is really tricky, that it's perfectly recorded. But I trust by the grace of God that things are going smoothly. Let's turn our attention to red flags in a child's behavior. What are the potential warning signs we might see in our children? I want to say this, that it's tricky. Many of these red flags, if you look at them in isolation, it looks like a normal behavior. Don't panic over a single sign. Just observe, look for patterns, look for sudden, unexplained changes. The biggest one is secretiveness, that secretive behavior. I think that's the biggest one, especially if your child is very bubbly, very open, and your child suddenly becomes protective of their phone. They begin to lock their doors. Do they angle the screen away from you? Do they close their laptops when you enter their rooms? These things, you need to begin to look at that. So teens value privacy. I'll be honest with you, but if it becomes extreme, especially around their devices, it's a concern. Look for significant behavioral changes. A child who was once outgoing and happy suddenly becomes withdrawn. An easygoing child becomes angry and aggressive for no reason. Sometimes the mood swings are hormonal, but there could be a sign of deep distress. Pay attention to new intense relationship, particularly when it's with someone older. That's another very big flag that we need to look into. Growing up, I had parents who trusted us. I remember telling my mom that I wanted a lesson teacher at the time. I wanted him to stop coming. I couldn't articulate why, but my mom did not even bother to ask why. That day, She paid the lesson teacher and told him not to step foot, in our house again. Let's learn to listen very closely to our child, especially to the words behind the words that they say. So pay attention to new intense relationship, particularly with someone older. Are there unexplained gifts of money? If your child suddenly has a new gadget, a new clothes, new car, She's not working. Where would they get the money from? Whoever gave them the gift should not have given them the gift without your knowledge in the first place. These are things you begin to watch, you begin to tackle, especially if you did not provide these things, right? How did they earn it? And if you chose special moments to make your child feel special, don't allow someone else to take up that space and suddenly make the child feel that every day is a special day, and then they begin to expect gifts, and if they don't get it from you, they turn to this person, and that person suddenly becomes, their messiah. Well, let's watch out for this habit. Notice their online habits. What are they watching? Who are they beginning to follow that they suddenly love? Are they avoiding, you know, devices they used to love to use? They no longer want to share things with you. That is also important. Then look out for inappropriate knowledge. If a child is beginning to use sexual undertones and seems to know a lot about sex that is beyond their years, it's a sign that they have been exposed to something they shouldn't be. And then finally, any use of substance. I mean, when it gets to that point, it's pretty dangerous, but it's still a sign. One of these signs might be nothing, but I would still look into them. A cluster of them means you should begin to gently and lovingly ask your child questions so you can investigate proper. The next part is the most challenging because it requires us to look critically at the behavior of adults around us, even the people we call our friends, even the people we call respected elders. Again, we are looking for patterns. We are not calling people names. We are not accusing people here. Now, some of the red flags in an adult behavior is sudden favoritism to one particular child out of a group. They now have a special one that gets all their attention. They're always looking for ways to be alone with that child. In fact, they might begin to undermine your authority by encouraging the child to break your rules, saying things like, "Oh, your parents are too strict. It's okay. You can do that with me. Don't worry. If your mom cannot get to this, I'll get it for you." Begin to watch out for such people. You might also notice that they seem to have befriended your family, but the real interest is the child and not you or the family members. Something else is also of the digital age. They are initiating private conversation and communication with your child. They have your child's phone number, or they are following your child on Instagram and are having chats with your child. Why? I'm the mother of this child. Why are you talking to my child by 8 in the evening? These are things you need to begin to watch out for. Now, these are not all the things, but time and all would not be able to allow us to explore as many as we can. To make this clear, I want us to look at this chart. On the left, we have the marks of a healthy relationship, and on the right, we have the marks of grooming behavior. Okay, so a healthy mentor is transparent with the parent. A groomer builds a wall of secrecy. Okay, a healthy mentor respects your family's rules and boundaries. Oh, we don't accept visitors by 7. Our child does not come home, you know, by 6. 6 is late. Everybody is in the house for latest. Do you understand? Things like that. When a groomer is encouraging the child to break rules, that's something to look out for. Uh, a healthy mentor invests in the group and does not isolate the child. A healthy mentor, excuse me, Okay, a healthy mentor makes communication public, right? Communication is public, communication is appropriate, it is respectful, the language. But the groomer would seek private communication, text, DMs, see me in my office, and the office is always locked, kind of picture. A healthy mentor focuses on the child's growth and well being, but the groomer would focus on feeling the adult's needs and tendencies and vices of the child, making the child feel like, oh, I'm old enough to do what I want. I want to do what I want. It's my life. A groomer would definitely do that. A healthy mentor would empower the child. A groomer would want the child to depend on them. So I'm hoping that this chat is of use. I'm also pretty sure that this particular um, 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 this presentation will be made available to everyone. But beyond the presentation, I was able to create a guide on sexual grooming. It's a faith-based guide. Permit me to just pull that up. Yes, it's a faith-based guide to protecting children and adolescents. It will be made available to everyone attending this event free of charge. I suspect that by now the copy is available. If it is not, it will be provided, and everyone will get a copy. Moving on, let's come back to the church. Why churches are a target? How real is this in Christian circles? Why would this even happen in the church, a place of sanctuary? Why would it be a target for predators? Again, predators are known for having a camouflage and a front that makes them trusted and respected in the society. And the church is one of the places where people tend to relax, you know, and bring down their armors because they feel and they hope that you are living the life of Christ. But the painful truth is that the very things that make our church communities beautiful, our trust, our grace, our openness, our desire to see the best in people, can be twisted and used against us. Predators are not drawn to churches because they are seeking God. They are drawn to churches because they are seeking children. And they know that churches are what we call soft targets. You know, they join the workforce, they go through all the procedures you want them to go through to be workers sometimes. But that's not the goal. They exploit the culture of trust in the church. And because we are called to be forgiving, we are called to believe the best about others. And a predator will use that as a camouflage. I've heard stories about pastors, I've heard stories about elders doing unspeakable things to children. And you would know that it was intentional, it was deliberate. So they rely on our reluctance to believe that, you know, respected elders cannot do such things. They rely on the fact that we probably will not believe our children when they say these things. So there is a powerful, well-meaning but dangerous mindset in many churches, that abuse does not just happen here. This denial is what a predator needs to operate in the shadows without being challenged. Churches offer easy access to children. Our ministers are centered around children and youth. Often we are desperate for volunteers. I wouldn't say desperate, but we really are welcoming people, and it's not a bad thing. I just need us to be more careful. You know, not everyone who goes through all the classes, you know, all the process and checks off the box. Not everyone. I need us to be discerning going forward, right? To be very, very discerning. Um, Let me move on to the next slide. I wanted to talk about the data, but because I will be sharing this presentation with anyone, with everyone rather, I would not have to talk about this too much. I honestly just want to hit on the issues, the things we can do, how to recognize, you know, these habits. I would like to just stick to that. So now, when abuse happens within the church, especially when it is perpetrated by a leader, the damage goes beyond physical and emotional. It causes a deep and profound spiritual wound. It also is very sad because if the person is a respected elder, you are caught between wanting the world to know what who this person is and what this person did, and proving to the child who was abused that we support you, we back you, and we definitely will put this person behind bars. If you don't do that, if you don't report this elder, if this person is not dealt with, if the case is not investigated, for example, the child thinks the church has failed her. The child will think that, oh, someone molested me and the church kept it quiet. And to be honest, we have a lot of that story. We have lots of stories like that today. Okay. But then again, you would think, oh, if we let this know, people would say this is a church where something like this happens. Unfortunately, this is the disaster that happens when abuse happens in church. A lot of people have called it tripartite betrayal because the leader abuses their personal relationship with the child, they abuse their organizational power within the church, and their perceived spiritual authority as a representative of God. It's a twisted, on trust. That's why it's really important that we tackle this in the church. Now, in these settings, faith also becomes a weapon. A predator can use scripture to justify their act, use prayer, use religious language to confuse and control a child. And there was a story recently that I couldn't get myself to complete. Apostle Lazarus' series called Stories, and I just couldn't get myself to complete that story because it was a story of a child and her father. And it wasn't just a story of a child and a father. The father is actually a pastor, which really made things very, very disturbing. They suggest that what they are doing to a child is a special thing, is an act that is righteous, and disobeying them is also disobeying God. It's really, again, it's twisted act. So this can really destroy a child's entire understanding of who God is. They begin to question the realness of God. They begin to wonder, if my father can do this, if my pastor can do this to me, then I don't think God exists. This is just a scam, and the very structure of our communities can also create a culture of silence. A child would say, who will believe me over a pastor, and this is the history that we have heard. History has shown that some institutions, when they are faced with an allegation, they prioritize protecting the reputation of that person and their church over protecting the child. They silence the victims, they quietly move the abusers to a new location, they move the assaulted child to somewhere else, maybe if it resulted in pregnancy. And moving abusers to a new location is not punishment. You've given that person a new ground to continue their arm, right? So we need to tackle this. The stakes are high. An attack on the church, an attack on a child, is an attack on the church, right? It's an attack on their very soul. It's also an attack on the relationship with God, their creator. So what can we do? Our first line of defense is equipping children themselves. This is why what we do at the Smile Outreach is really important. We don't see a lot of people doing it. This is an under-researched topic. This is not a topic even African organizations talk about. Everybody goes straight to the rape, the abuse, the violence itself. But we need to understand that before the violence, most of the times, these children have been groomed. Even adults are being groomed. So the first line of defense is equipping our children themselves. We need to give them the tools, the language, the agency to protect themselves and recognize these things and report these things immediately. First, use correct names for body parts. Don't give body parts silly names. Don't send a message that their breast is a shameful part of their body and they're not giving their breast different names. Do you understand? Use proper anatomical terms. Give your child the accurate vocabulary they need to tell you that something is wrong. Mr. So and so touched my breast, mommy, today. I want to tell you what happened. Make it quick and easy for the child to say what's happening to them. You know, a simple and effective tool is the baton switch rule. Teach it early and often. The parts of your body, and the parts that the suit covers. So no one should touch you in these places. Ask them, you know, if anyone touches you here, it is wrong. No one should touch you here. In fact, if I, your auntie, I should only do that when I'm beating you. Make it clear. I remember my mom back then, she would say, as you are going out, even if you see Uncle Johnson, don't answer him. Because according to her, and as far as she's concerned, she's not expecting anybody. So I did being Uncle Johnson, for example, I'd called home to say, oh, I'm coming to see you guys. It's a different case, but she had to do it that way because we live in a very, very, very strange world. So we must teach our children that their bodies belongs to them. They have the right to say no to any touch they don't want. We must respect that no. It includes forced hugs, forced kisses, even from relatives. It's a no, is a no. All right. Teach them the value of clean hugs, the value of high fives, the value of a wave sometimes. Empower them to set boundaries and counter the compliance that groomers rely on. Teaching our children the powerful act of no, the powerful act of go, leave me, the powerful act of I will tell my mom, I will tell my dad, I will tell my parent, I will tell my pastor. If anyone ever makes them feel comfortable, allow them to use these words to their advantage. No, go, leave me alone, or I will tell someone about this. Ensure that they practice this all the time. Okay? Talk about unsafe secrets. Explain to them that some secrets, like surprise birthday party, they are fun. But any secret that makes them feel scared, that worries them, that concerns them, they don't understand what it means. Those are unsafe secrets. In fact, there should be no secrets, right? There shouldn't be secrets in the first place for your child. All right. So no grown up should ever ask you to keep anything from your parent, from your mom and your dad. That should be a simple rule. Now, while we empower our children, the most critical protective shield around them is you, the parents, the guidance, the workers, the teachers, the volunteers. Your active, loving involvement is irreplaceable. So, open communication. Work to create a relationship where the child genuinely believes that they can come to you for anything. No matter how awkward it is, no matter how weird and scary it is, allow them to come and tell you anything. Let them know you would listen without freaking out. Let them know you would listen without shouting. You will always be on their side. You would believe them. Open line of communication is our safe line. It's our lifeline. Be vigilant online. Keep internet connected devices out of the bedroom. Keep them in common family places so that it does not breed secrecy. Okay, use parental controls when where applicable. If you don't know how to do it, when you are setting up your TVs, you can tell someone to help you set parental controls so they cannot access certain programs. For example, especially if you suspect that these programs will not add value to your children's lives, make it your business to know the games that they are playing, where they are on social media, the things they are liking. Make it your business to know. Have them show you, you know, ask them who they talk to. Know their world, online, offline, know it. Be present, be involved, know their friends. Make a point to even know the adults in their lives. If it's beyond the teachers in their schools and the teachers at church, find out why. What is causing that connection? How did they have access to your child in the first place? Don't just drop them off at practice. Have a conversation with the coach. How is my child doing? Ask the child, what's happening with this coach? Do you like this coach? Is there something going on that I should know? You know, do not be an helicopter parent, but Be aware, be watchful, trust your gut. If you feel something is not right, especially with the interaction with a child, then something is not. Make sure you really look, you investigate that feeling till you are sure everything is good. Okay? Don't dismiss your feelings. Don't dismiss that intuition. Don't dismiss that you are discerning. You have the right and the responsibility to ask questions, to observe more closely, to set firm boundaries for the protection of our children. Our collective responsibility as a church calls that we should be vigilant. We should be vigilant. As a body of believers, we must build a fortress of safety around our children. I'm not saying we should write, we should be ready to prepare statements when abuse happens. No, I'm not saying we should have policies. Obviously, these policies are needed, but the enforcement of these policies is what matters. Do we have child protection policy right now? That's my first question in the church. Do we have that? Do we have a safeguarding policy? You know, sometimes churches resist, these things that we need to put in place, but having policies and procedures, it seems corporate, but it just helps know, it helps us have a system of how we would act, and obviously we don't want some things to happen, but it just puts everyone in check. So we need to reframe our thinking entirely. A child protection policy is not a document of suspicion. It's a document of love. It is how we as an institution live out the command to protect our little ones. A strong policy will capture protection of your children by creating layers of safety and accountability. Another would protect your volunteers by establishing a clear guideline of how they would interact with your children and prevent situations where actions can be misunderstood. So, for example, don't be alone with a child. The door should not be locked. The windows should not be closed. That sort of thing. So, it is protecting the child, but it is also protecting the workers and the volunteers, establishing a guideline of how they interact with children so that everyone is safe, everyone is at rest. And third, protecting the church as a whole. I'm really getting tired of some of the stories that I hear because it reduces, it sets us back, We want to tell the world about Jesus, but stories like this, people come and say, is it not in church this happened? We don't want that to happen anymore. So predators look for the path of least resistance. When they see a church with a well enforced safety policy, they would not stay there. They will move on. They will look for softer and easier targets, right? So let our policy guide us. No trespassing sign. In addition to prayers, we'll set these systems and structures in place because it is a practical application that helps us to be wise, while we protect our children. What does a good policy look like? A good policy is built on several pillars. It's built on clear, practical rules that work together for a safe environment. Again, this is not a checklist. This is not just a document we have. Everybody, if we create a safeguarding policy, a child safety policy today, we need to socialize that policy and ensure that every worker reads it. And if every worker says they've gone through it, they will sign and say, yes, I read it and I agree to abide by these rules, for the protection of our children, right? So first is a rigorous screening. Every single person that works with children, whether they are paid or not, whether they are volunteers or not, they must be interviewed, their references must be checked. Do they have criminal backgrounds? Some of these things need to be handled. 2 adult rule, no adult should be alone with a child, right? Secure check-in and check-out, a documentation system for us to know at what point did you meet with this child, at what point did you leave this child. Let us be clear on these things. Training. This, for me, is my way of offering training. It is something that we are happy to do at Smile Outreach. So if you perceive that you're about to have new set of workers, for example, and they need to go through training to understand grooming processes and understand how to interact with children, that is also something that we are happy to do. Open window policy, open door policy. All classroom doors should have windows open. I mean, yes, All doors be open. Visibility, accountability, secrecy, privacy out of the door, right? And then a response plan. What happens in the case of an allegation? How do we handle it? Who do we notify? What is the immediate action? Your policy will capture all of these things. Again, this presentation will be made available for us all. So I'm sorry if it looks like I'm running or rushing through this slide. Now we pray that we will never have to use this information. When the unthinkable happens, when a child discloses abuse to you, how do we respond? You see, this number one thing, believing the child, it's something that we struggle with as a church, right? Look them in the eye and say, thank you for telling me. We will take this on, right? For a child who has been manipulated into feeling guilty to come out and talk to you, believe that child, please. The second job is to listen to them talk without probing. Just listen. For now, listen. Don't ask for graphic details. Listen. Don't ask why did you go there? Yes, you went there deliberately. Let's not do that. This is 2025. Let's move past this kind of thinking. Reassure, reaffirm, and then report. Report to the right places. Your report, when you report to the designated safety person in the church, you can also report it to services or to the police, especially and depending on the gravity of the situation. I want to talk about something, and I don't know if this will be accepted, but I wish it is, because I would like that the church does not misapply biblical concepts. We must understand that justice requires accountability, right? God hates oppression, and it does not joke with his children. We cannot bypass the legal system because an elder in the church is an elder. We need to report an abuser to the authorities. It's not an act of vengeance. In fact, I see it as an act of love. It is an act of justice for the victim. It's an act of protection for the community. Even if they've repented, still protect the community. We must learn to distinguish between remorse and repentance. An abuser who is caught will cry. They will apologize. They will beg because they have been caught. If they were not caught, they would have continued. So this sorrow is because of the consequence that they know they will face, right? Repentance, fine. It is a complete turning away from sin, a changed life that produces new fruit over a long period of time. But at that instance, it has to be reported. Else, you would tamper with the future of that child. That child will not have a voice. Look for evidence of true repentance, but please report this person to the authorities, right? We must not offer cheap grace that endangers the flock. You cannot give an abuser a pass because they said they were sorry. I see that my network went off, so I'm going to repeat that statement. We must not offer cheap grace that endangers the church. We cannot allow an abuser and a rapist to say, I am sorry, and stay in the church. When we do that, we are allowing them back into the position of trust. That is not grace. That is not forgiveness. That is negligence. And we would have destroyed the life of a girl because that child will be dealing with the trying to wrap her head around what has happened to her, might deal with it for years. And somebody will say sorry and we leave that person in the church. No, we re-victimize that abused person. We re-victimize a child when the child talks about abuse and we let the abuser stay. That is what we have done. And then we put every other child at risk. That is not grace. That is not forgiveness. That is negligence. That is us covering up, trying to save our reputation. What reputation are we saving? If we are truly a church of love, we will report this act. Our primary pastoral duty is to the sheep, not the wolf. in this case. We've covered a lot of heavy material today. I know I've said a lot of things, and it's easy to be overwhelmed. It's even easy to be a little fearful, wondering, oh, I guess I've been misbehaving or I've not been acting the appropriate way, with children. That's okay. I want everyone to know that knowledge is power. It helps us to act right. It equips us. It equips us, right? We are not paralyzing ourselves with fear. Awareness is our shield. Proactive action is our duty. And we serve a God who is a fierce protector of the vulnerable. And when we and his people work together to build a community that is truly, truly a safe sanctuary, a place that is safe for every child that is seen, a place that is safe for every child, whether they are Christians or not. When they come into our folk, let them know they're in a place of safety and rest. A place that is free for them to flourish into the men and women God have created them to be. That is what we want our churches to be. It is easy to build strong children than to repair broken men. So let's ensure that our children are extremely safe. This brings me to the end of this session. I really hope that this was helpful in any way. I hope that my Wi-Fi did not act up at any point. Again, the presentations will be available. The ebook on protecting and children and adolescents would also be available. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I do not take this for granted. And see you when I see you.